What's up? Ghost Fictions is here, and we're back again. This is a story where Izuku married with RWBY girls. But before we start, please consider subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. Don't forget to check the description for more informations, and support the amazing author, DevDog756, for writing this story. Now let's get into part 3. John, Nora, Pyrrha and Rin were getting their gear on before heading towards the training ground and faces their opponents, being Lita, Mina, Minata and Zero. And right off the bat, Pyrrha used her semblance to keep Lita in place due to his suit being metal. What the, how are you doing this? Lita yelled out as he tried as hard as he could to move but kept failing to do so. Magnets, bitch, was all that Pyrrha said as Zero's face turned pale white. Yeah nope, I'm tapping out, Zero said as he put his hands up while Mina and Minata looked at him like he was crazy. What do you mean you're tapping out? Mina shouted while Minata was too busy perving on Pyrrha and Nora. Exactly what I said. You heard her, think about the implications. She's basically Magneto just as a teenage girl and without the baggage and trauma of being a Holocaust survivor. Plus they're all fucking strapped. Ark has a sword and shield, Nikos has a blade that doubles as a damn semi-automatic, Ren has machine guns and Valkyrie has a hammer that doubles as a grenade launcher. Zero yelled out. Oh please, those two chicks don't have the guts to. 4. Nora cut Minata off by hitting him with her hammer, sending the grape flying. Wanna gang up on him, Nora? John asked as Nora had an excited grin on her face. You read my mind, fearless leader, Nora yelled as she and John ran after Minata while Pyrrha threw Lita back using her semblance. And Minata wonders why no woman will ever give him the time of day, Pyrrha said while Rin just shook his head. No fair, that's cheating, Mina complained, making Pyrrha and Rin have deadpan looks on their faces. You got to be joking, Pyrrha using her semblance is cheating. Explain to me in what universe is using a power you're born with considered cheating? Rin asked as Mina couldn't think of an answer and rushed him and Pyrrha, only for Pyrrha to trip her up with her shield and Rin to kick her into a nearby wall. How did you think that was going to go? Pyrrha asked with a sassy tone in her voice as Mina started throwing acid at the duo, as Pyrrha used her shield to block and deflect the acid while Rin showed off his acrobatics as he dodged Mina's attacks with ease, before quickly finding cover. Rin then started firing his machine guns at Mina, who used her acid under her feet to help her maneuver around Ren's bullets and outpace Pyrrha, before Lita tried to pull a fast one on Ren but he saw it coming from a mile away and kept jumping out of the way of Lita's attacks. Ren and Lita then kicked each other at the same time, resulting in their legs clashing as Ren had some issue due to Lita wearing armor but he quickly bashed his foot into Lita's face, causing him to stumble backwards before Ren jumped over him and threw the blue hair stickler over his shoulders. Lita hit a wall and before he had any time to react, he found himself on the receiving end of a bunch of punches and kicks from Ren, and quickly ended up unconscious due to Ren's onslaught, who quickly ran towards Pyrrha who was in the middle of chasing Mina. All I have to do is tire her out, then I can take her down with ease, Mina thought to herself as she threw some more acid at Pyrrha, who quickly jumped out of the way as Mina fully turned around but couldn't see Pyrrha anywhere. What the? Where'd you go, Miss Champion? You scared of me? Mina taunted, trying to draw Pyrrha out, which didn't work as Mina immediately turned around, having heard something behind her which started to creep her out. Mina then heard a nearby metal pole fall to the ground, which made her more freaked out as she looked all around her, trying to find wherever Pyrrha was hiding. TTT, this isn't funny, Nikos, come out, Mina shouted with a very obvious tone of fear in her voice, and right before her eyes, she saw Rin and Pyrrha reappear as the color returned to them before they both punched Mina right in the face, making her stumble back before falling down. How the hell did you do that? Mina asked as she held her face while absolutely confused to what just happened. That'd be my semblance. It allows me to mask negative emotions and turn invisible, along with anyone in very close proximity to me. And unlike your bestie, I can actually turn off my invisibility, Rin said with a little smirk as Mina fell unconscious, right before he and Pyrrha saw an unconscious Minata roll over to where they were. Nice work, guys, John said with a smile as he and Nora walked over to the other half of their team, before Pyrrha quickly kissed him while Nora did the same with Rin, before picking up their unconscious opponents and took them to get healed while Zero walked over to the rest of the class. See, that is what teamwork truly looks like. Some of you could learn a few things from my sister and her team, Urza said with a strict tone while glaring at certain people while Inko used a randomizer to decide the next matchup. After a moment, the randomizer landed on the next matchup being Yang and Weiss against Katsumi and Tsuyu as the two duos got ready and made it to the training ground. Oh, this is going to be really easy, Yang said while doing some stretches, looking forward to handing Katsumi some nice, cold karma. Don't immediately underestimate our opponents, Yang. They could have some tricks up their sleeves. Weiss said to Yang, who just rolled her eyes. Oh, don't make me laugh, Weiss cream. We got this in the bag. Katsumi has the most obvious tell in the history of tells, and the bootleg Kermit is weak to the cold. You don't need to be a genius to figure that out. Yang said as Weiss knew she had a point as Yang prepared Ember Celica while Weiss did the same with Murdermaster. Begin, Inko said as Yang rushed towards Katsumi and decked her right in the face as hard as she could while Weiss created a few ice spikes around Tsuyu, causing her to immediately start feeling weakened but managed to jump away from the ice. Katsumi started throwing punch after punch at Yang, who just dodged, blocked, and countered everything Katsumi threw at her. Man, this is just sad and pathetic, Katsumi. Have you not bothered to actually learn how to properly fight? Yang asked as she caught one of Katsumi's fists. TCH, shut the hell up, Yang. Katsumi yelled as she used her free hand to blast Yang with a point-blank explosion which didn't do much to the fun-loving blonde brawler of Izuku's heart. I'm surprised that short fuse of yours hasn't gotten you into deep shit, Yang said before tripping Katsumi and went to go for a punch as she winked, before punching Katsumi into the ground. Katsumi hit the ground fast and hard, but took the chance to knock Yang off balance by sweeping her legs using her hand, though Yang managed to immediately get back on her feet. Yang then kicked Katsumi in the face before quickly kicking her into the air as she grabbed Katsumi by the leg and spun her around for a moment, before throwing her away and caught up to her using the recoil from her gauntlets to launch herself toward Katsumi. Meanwhile, Tsuyu was dodging multiple slashes from Weiss, who wasn't letting up with her attacks one bit while Tsuyu tried to jump away, only for Weiss to use her glyphs to turn the ground. Tsuyu jumped to turn to ice, causing the frog girl to slip up and fall over. It's a miracle how you were able to live this long with any formal combat training. Then again, not like Aizawa would get off his lazy ass and do his job. Weiss said as Tsuyu's tongue suddenly launched toward Weiss and got her by her wrist, before Tsuyu spun Weiss around before let her fly into a wall, which threw Weiss off her game a bit. Seems like the Ice Queen can't take a hit, ribbit, Tsuyu said as she walked towards the downed Weiss, who quickly grabbed her weapon and managed to get a good hit on Tsuyu, absolutely catching her off guard before Weiss created a dome of ice around Tsuyu, which quickly caused her to enter hibernation as the dome retracted. Take it from me, Ajui, your bluntness can and will cause problems. Then again, someone as smart and mature as you should have already realized that, Weiss said as she ran off to help Yang fight Katsumi while Tsuyu fell asleep. Meanwhile, Yang was absolutely not pulling any of her punches against Katsumi as she bashed her face against her knee, before sending her back with an uppercut. The impact sent Katsumi flying back before she readjusted herself, and used her explosions to fling herself back towards Yang and went to land a punch, only to punch an ice wall Weiss summoned in front of Yang to shield her. Don't think that will be enough to cool her off, Yang said with a grin as Weiss rolled her eyes at Yang's pun before Katsumi destroyed the ice wall with an explosion, making Yang and Weiss jump back. Weiss started creating ice constructs in order to slow Katsumi down to give Yang time to blindside her and knock her down, which further increased Katsumi's anger, as she launched multiple explosions at all the ice constructs Weiss made and continued being up in Yang's face. However, this was more of a positive in Yang's favor due to Katsumi making more mistakes the later she got as Yang kicked Katsumi below the belt, causing her lots of pain as she threw caution to the wind and made the mistake of grabbing Yang's hair. Weiss said as Yang then punched Katsumi right in the breasts, causing more pain as Weiss took the chance and slashed Katsumi in the back. Ah, that hurt, ice bitch. Katsumi yelled as she backhanded Weiss, which caused her lots of damage due to her gauntlets as the heiress was sent flying back. Weiss. Yang yelled out in concern for her friend before quickly continuing to beat Katsumi down, now more pissed than she was before as she grabbed her by the leg and slammed Katsumi on the ground with a lot of force. You really just a self-centered bitch, Katsumi, you always have been, Yang said as she grabbed Katsumi by the collar and punched her in the gut, before throwing her away as she tumbled back for a bit. Izuku just wanted to be your friend and you treated him like trash, and for fucking what, because of something he had no control over, and hell, me and RWBY didn't do a thing to you and you kept on antagonizing us for no reason. Yang yelled as she kicked Katsumi in the breasts, before slamming her face into the ground. So what the hell is your problem with me? Yang shouted as Katsumi got back up, albeit very weakly. At least my mother bothered to stick around in my life. Izuku probably just feels sorry for you, Katsumi said as everyone other than those who knew Yang well were shocked to hear that as the dam broke as Yang activated her semblance. Yang rushed at Katsumi as fast as she could move, no only caring about absolutely breaking Katsumi's spirit and pride, and punched Katsumi in the face so hard, She started bleeding the moment Yang's fist collided with her face. Katsumi stumbled backwards while holding her face, fully being aware of the mistake she had just made, and she had no way to get out of it, before finding herself getting kneed in the face by Yang and quickly was thrown over her shoulders. Katsumi tried to get back up, but she kept getting beat down by Yang, feeling her wrath as Yang grabbed her by the collar again and just started wailing on her. Every punch Yang threw represented all her anger and rage she felt towards Katsumi for years, especially for how she treated Izuku, as she did not let up in her onslaught before throwing Katsumi onto the ground. Yang was going to continue to beat Katsumi down before she noticed that she had some of Katsumi's blood on her hand. The shock made Yang snap out of her anger as she let go of Katsumi as she stumbled backwards a bit before dropping to her knees. "Oh God, what have I done?" Yang asked herself as she started to tear up as she took in what she just did, as she felt someone place their hand on her shoulder, an injured and slightly bleeding Weiss. Weiss knew what was going through Yang's mind as she hugged the crying blonde before Izuku, RWBY, Blake, Momo, Urza and JNPR all ran over to them and joined Weiss in hugging the crying Yang. "Oh Yang," Inko thought to herself as she held her face in her hand while the students were all discussing among themselves about what they just learned about Yang. Something that Inko knew was going to lead to a massive mess. Yang was all alone in her and Izuku's room while looking out the window before looking down at her hands, which were slightly shaking. "I can't believe I did that. Guess I'm no better than Katsumi, or even Raven for that matter," Yang thought to herself as she heard the door open and saw her little snowball walk in. "Mama, Papa said you're feeling sad," Eri said softly as she closed the door while she walked over to Yang and hopped onto the bed. "Don't be sad, Mama. You know that me and Papa really, really love you," Eri said as Yang quickly hugged her daughter while crying. "I know you and your Papa love me, sweetie. Yang tried to think of something to say, but her sadness stopped her from finishing her sentence as she held on to Eri tighter. "Oh, Mama," Eri said while hugging Yang, trying her best not to cry as well before the door opened again, as Yang saw Izuku walk in before closing the door and hugging her. "Shhhh, let it all out, Yang," Izuku said softly as he strokes her cheek while looking at his golden dragon in the eyes. "You know I'd never leave you," Izuku said as Yang hugged him and Eri and had no signs of letting go. "You've always been there to pick me up whenever I was sad. Let me do the same for you, Yang," Izuku said as Yang kept on crying while outside the room. The others were all piled around their room with their emotions all over the place. "Does the universe just hate all of us or something?" Nora yelled out in frustration, while being consoled by Ren as John clenched his fists before attempting to leave. "John, where are you going?" Pyrrha asked, getting a bad feeling seeing her boyfriend acting the way he is. "I'm going to go tear Katsumi a new one," John said as RWBY got in front of him. "John, don't, it's not worth it. RWBY, that bitch terrorized me, you and Izuku for years over the most idiotic reasons imaginable. She does deserve every amount of pain inflicted onto her," John said as he tried to move past RWBY, but she wouldn't let up. "John, Yang already gave her more than enough pain to repay for what she did. Besides, attacking Katsumi while she's already down will just make the rest of the class hate us even more," RWBY explained as John knew RWBY was right as he slumped against the wall. "Isn't there something we can do about this whole mess?" Momo asked as the others all shocked their heads no. "Honestly, Momo, there's not much we can do. All we can do is hope this whole thing blows over fast, but at this rate I doubt it will," Blake said while leaning against the wall, being able to hear Yang's crying. As if Yang beating Bakugo senseless wasn't bad enough, now they won't ever let her hear the end of the fact her own mother abandoned her, Weiss said in an annoyed and pissed off tone. "Worst case scenario, we could always stay at the guild for a while until things here blow over," Pyrrha suggested, knowing that there was a very high chance that things were about to get way worse. Not a bad idea. Besides, being at the guild would give Rin, Nora, Blake, Weiss and Momo better opportunities to train and get stronger. Plus, they'd fit right in. Urza thought to herself while Pyrrha felt bad for one of her closest friends as Weiss stood up and walked off. "Weiss, where are you going?" RWBY asked as Weiss turned around to look at her friends. "I'm going to get something for Yang to eat," Weiss said as she continued walking towards the kitchen, hoping that whatever she decided to make for Yang would lift her spirits, even if just by a little bit. Weiss made her way to the common area, where the rest of the class were while talking about what happened with Yang and Katsumi as Weiss just ignored them all and went to the kitchen, wanting to make a pizza for Yang, which Izuku left some instructions for as she started making the pizza. "Guess that explains why Yang tries so hard to do right by everyone she's close to," Achiko said, now fully realizing the reasons behind Yang's motherly tendencies. "I had no idea she has abandonment issues. I feel like such a jerk," Kaminari said while holding his head down in shame. Oh, who cares, Denki? Chicks with parental issues are so hot. Minata said with an extremely perverted grin on his face, which Weiss ignored as Kaminari completely had it with Minata. Okay, that is it, I have had it with you, Minata. First you tell me that being an asshole to girls is what makes them like you, now you're basically admitting to wanting to take advantage of girls with baggage. Kaminari yelled at Minata, which took everyone completely off guard. Another thing, you say we're friends, but you constantly keep using me as a scapegoat for whenever your schemes backfire. And you didn't even bother to help me with my studying when you're smarter than me. What's up with that? Kaminari continued yelling at Minata. Well, Denki, You know what, save it. I don't want to hear it. Feel free to continue being a pervert, Minata. I'm actually going to try being a decent member of society, and say sorry to Izuku and the others when I get the chance. Kaminari said before leaving to head to his room. And by the way, Bakugo deserved what Xiaolong did to her. She's an egotistical bitch who refuses to admit she's wrong and can't remember our names even if she tried. Kaminari said before leaving for his room, leaving Weiss pleasantly surprised. Yeah, I'm with Denki on this one. Sure, Xiaolong went a little overboard, but Bakugo had it coming and then some. Plus Kaminari is right, you are a shitty friend, Minata, Shiro said, which made Minata absolutely offended, despite that being the truth. Hey, life is all about picking up hot chicks. Minata shouted as Shiro taped his mouth shut. You're seriously siding with her, Shiro. Yang is a trigger-happy bitch who went too far with Bakugo because she has mommy issues. Mina shouted while Ochako had enough of Mina's shit. So what, Shido? It was okay for Bakugo to do the same thing to me during the sports festival, if not even worse. Ochako said, on the verge of screaming, which took both Mina and Tsuyu back up. That was different, Ochako. How in the hot crispy Kentucky fired fuck was that different? Because it was in a tournament. Bitch please, there is a massive difference between a tournament match and a death match, and it's a miracle I wasn't in the amount of pain I should have been. Ochako ranted, shocking everyone that the sweet Machi girl just dropped the F-bomb. I am beyond certain that had I not fallen unconscious when I did, Bakugo would have fucking paralyzed me, if not bring me close to death. You tell me how the fuck that is any different to what Yang did, Ochako continued to rant. Watch your language, Uraraka, Lita yelled while his hand was having a stroke before Shoto backhanded him across the face. Oh, give it a rest, you control freak. I don't know what your problems with Izuku's friends and girlfriends even are. Sure, they have their flaws. Who doesn't? But that doesn't discredit the fact they are good people at the end of the day. Shoto said, not hesitating to defend his friend's honor. Oh please, Todoroki, they all seem like the types to bend the rules just to get what they want. Lita shouted at Shoto while Weiss was slowly but surely reaching her breaking point. So it's fine when you did the exact same thing when you tried to go after Stain to avenge your brother, who is still alive, I might add. And hell, it's because of me and Izuku that you're even still alive, which neither of us have been, thanked by the way, Shoto yelled as Lita tried to come up with a retort, but he knew Shoto was 100% right yet didn't want to admit it. Besides, sometimes the rules need to be broken in order to do the right thing. Plus, while rules are a good thing, sometimes they cause more problems than necessary, like I don't know, the old and extremely flawed rule that stopped people from using their powers in public, regardless if it is to save someone. Shoto yelled out, which made Lita start slightly shaking. Well, it's hard to feel any form of sympathy for a girl whose family uses slave labor, Aoyama said with a smug smile as Weiss was getting even closer to her breaking point. Why is he throwing his hat into the ring? He kept his mouth shut the whole time we've been here so far. No, just ignore them, Weiss. Don't let them piss you off. Weiss thought to herself as she finished putting together the pizza and placed it in the oven and waited. I don't even know how Shni even got into Beacon in the first place. She can barely take a hit. Ajri had her dead to rights before cheating with her quirk, Lita said with a nasty tone in his voice as something in Weiss snapped. Semblance, Weiss said with a cold tone in her voice as the rest of the class turned to look at her. What did you say? Lita demanded as Weiss turned around and stormed over the others, and she wasn't happy one bit. I used my semblance against Ajri. There's a difference between a quirk and semblance. Quirks have a cutoff date at 4 to 5 years old, while semblances can be unlocked at any point in your life, be it naturally or through training or a traumatic experience. Weiss snapped, not appreciating Lita just assuming quirks and semblances are the same thing. And it is completely ridiculous for you to assume that villains and criminals would abide by the rules when they very clearly do not, so it is beyond stupid to hold us to the same standards. Yes, I will admit me and my team have bent the rules a good many times, but we did it knowing we'd help keep people safe because it's our job, Weiss said, trying to maintain her composure, but she was reaching a point where she didn't care about that. You really think you're better than everyone, you Atlesian scum, Lita screamed while Weiss remained unfazed. Why do you think I'm even here? Weiss asked, which threw Lita through a loop. Why else would I be here if I didn't care? You seriously believe I haven't seen all the pain and damage that has been caused by both my father and Atlas? I might be young, but I am far from being naive. It's all because of my father that my mother has an alcohol problem, and why I'm all the way out here, to get as far away from him as possible. Weiss said while clenching her fist, trying not to use her semblance out of sheer rage at the lack of care from most of her classmates. I don't know what your problem's with us, and at this point I don't really care anymore. Me and my friends will become huntsmen and huntresses, and me and the girls will have a happy family with Izuku, regardless if you're on our side or not. Weiss stated, not caring that they think about her relationship with Izuku as Mina was about to open her mouth, before Weiss pointed Murdermaster at her. Please, open that idiotic mouth of yours, I dare you, Weiss said as Mina quickly shut her mouth before the pizza was finished as Weiss pulled the pizza out of the oven before heading back to Izuku and Yang's room. TCH, what a stuck-up bitch. She'd be better off behind a desk in Atlas, Mina said with a nasty tone in her voice as Shoto, Kirishima and Achiko all clenched their fists. And you'd be better off in a circus, you'd definitely fit in there, Kyoka said in an incredibly annoyed and pissed off tone in her voice which took Mina by surprise. And for someone who's supposed to hate bullies, you sure are acting like one, Shoto said as Mina looked offended. I am not, tell them Tsu, Mina shouted as Tsuyu had nothing to say, much to Mina's shock. What the hell, Tsu? Case in point. You keep defending Bakugo, who definitely can't remember your name, and you've been acting nasty to Yamamo, Team RWBY and JNPR for no good reason. That sounds a lot like a bully, Kyoka said before storming off while flipping Mina off. With Izuku. Izuku was taking a little walk around campus in an attempt to clear his head, while Yang was taking a nap with Eri. God, this is a mess. All Yang and the others want to get along with the rest of the class, and it has gone beyond wrong. Are most of the class just snakes, or have we all done something wrong? Izuku thought to himself while walking alone, having the feeling that someone was watching him, which he ignored. While walking, lots of thoughts were flying through Izuku's mind, a big one being if Izuku should cut his losses and ask to be transferred to Beacon, not knowing if he can take much more of the negativity from the likes of Aizawa, Lita, Mina, Mineta, etc. before a voice made him stop dead in his tracks. Hey, hearing that made Izuku go into overdrive as his hand lit up in flames as he decked whoever it was he figured was following him, quickly realizing who it was. Oh, it's you. What do you want, Togata? Izuku asked, clearly not being in a good mood as Mirio rubbed his face in pain. Ow, what was that for, dude? Mirio asked as he got back up onto his feet, still rubbing his face as Izuku just rolled his eyes. Most people don't like being followed. Besides, if you couldn't tell, I am not in a good mood and don't want to deal with more obnoxious BS, especially from you, Izuku said, with a tone that just screamed, do not get on my bad side. What's that supposed to mean? Mirio asked as Izuku just face-palmed and looked at Mirio. You know what I mean, your brilliant idea to want to leave Eri with Overhaul, Izuku snapped, taking Mirio by surprise as fire, lightning, water, light and darkness all faintly flicked around Izuku's hands at once. Well, I was thinking logically, of all the people around us, Mirio explained as Izuku just walked right up to his blonde upperclassman. But there's the thing, none of the people around us that day got hurt. Overhaul already had a massive manhunt against him, so him butchering a bunch of innocent people would have put him and his gang in even more trouble than they already were, Izuku said, as Mirio tried to think of a way to justify his actions. But that's not all, you're no man or a hero, you're a puppet, Izuku said as Mirio gasped at what Izuku had said about him. Who are you calling a puppet? Night Eye says jump, you jump? He's fight, you fight. Sounds like a very satisfying existence for him anyway, Izuku said as he crossed his arms. I have absolute faith in Sir Night Eye. He's never steered me wrong, that's why I follow him, Mirio said, wanting to defend his mentor. So what, you have no faith in yourself? And what are you going to do whenever Night Eye dies? Will you just find someone else to place all your faith in, or just quit? Izuku asked, wanting Mirio to answer his question, yet he completely dodged Izuku's question. What would you know about putting faith in others? Every single fight I've seen you in, you always go in head first, never letting the others do any of the heavy lifting, Mirio said as Izuku just started laughing at Mirio's baseless accusation. If you think that's true, you clearly don't know the true story behind any one of the events my class has been in. I always took the blunt of the attacks because I know I can take it and give the others the chance to get things done, Izuku said as Mirio didn't like that Izuku quickly made a retort to his question. Seems like I touched a nerve. Me thinks the puppet don't protest too much, Izuku joked as Mirio was getting annoyed with Izuku. Oh, will you give it a rest? Okay fine, do what you want. Or rather, keep doing what Night Eye wants. But I for one, refuse to be a puppet, my destiny is mine to decide, no one else's. Izuku said before turning away and walking back towards his and Yang's room, leaving a very upset Mirio. After a bit of walking, Izuku made to his and Yang's room as he flew up to the open window as he climbed back into the room, just as Eri and Yang woke up from their nap while Izuku closed the window. Feeling better Yang? Izuku asked as he hugged his golden brawler and strokes the back of her hand, while running his hand through her hair. A bit, I still feel awful for what I did earlier. Yang said as Izuku rested his forehead against Yang's forehead. Let's not worry about that, let's just focus on the bright side, Izuku said as he strokes Yang's cheek before the door opened as they saw Weiss walk in holding the pizza she made. Weiss, did you make that? Yang asked, being pleasantly surprised as the others followed Weiss into Izuku and Yang's room. Yeah, I figured I'd at least try to do something for you, especially with how I used to act. Weiss said as she set the pizza down on their nightstand. You didn't have to do that, Weiss, Yang said as she hugged the lovable Ice Queen. I know, but I wanted to do it, we're friends after all. Weiss said as she smiled while Yang, Izuku and Eri started eating the pizza. All immediately liked it as Eri thanked Weiss up and down for making it, definitely making Weiss smile. You're welcome Eri. Weiss smiled as Momo lifted Eri up and hugged her. You adorable little bean Eri. You deserve every amount of love in the world. Momo said as Eri smiled and hugged Momo. I'm surprised that Grim ain't completely swarming the school, you think they'd sense all the negative that's happened. Ren commented as Izuku looked at Ren while ruffling Eri's hair. Oh, that's because of a device that Nizu commissioned that hides negative emotions that surrounds the whole school, kind of like your semblance Ren. Izuku explained as it all made sense to the others. You'd think stuff like that would be installed at all the schools, definitely would render the possibility of a sudden Grim attack null and void. Urza said as the others just shrugged their shoulders. Guess it's too expensive, I guess, John suggested as he picked up Eri and ruffled her hair. Budget cuts, am I right? Pira joked, getting a laugh from everyone in the room as Yang's spirits were looking up. Meanwhile, Cinder was smirking evilly while looking at her phone while Emerald and Mercury were looking over her shoulder. Oh, this will be too easy, his class is already falling apart, Cinder said with a smug, shit-eating grin on her face, fully confident whatever she had planned would work. You sure we can even find a way to break that seal? For all we know, it could be one of those seals that even the ones who created the seal can't break. Mercury mentioned, not sure if what they're trying to achieve would end up being impossible. We will find a way to break that seal. All seals get weak and break at some point, but we will break that seal in no time. Cinder said as her eyes began to glow. What the actual hell is wrong with you? Midnight yelled at Aizawa, her annoyance and anger being extremely clear in her voice. And I thought that stunt you pulled last year with the first years was your finest hour. But all of this just takes the damn cake, Midnight continued ranting as she rubbed the sides of her head. TCH, I don't get why all of you are treating me like I'm the problem, I'm just doing my job, Aizawa said, not caring about the situation he's in as Midnight let out an incredibly annoying moan, before slamming her hands against the table. Oh please Aizawa, enlighten me on how sleeping on the job, lying to your students, neglecting your duties and having it out for one of your students counts as doing your job. Midnight asked, being very close to snapping as Aizawa still didn't care. You expect me to go easy with those brats, especially Yagi's brat. He's been nothing but a problem child since he started attending. Aizawa said, with a very clear tone of venom in his voice as Midnight was now getting even closer to losing her cool. Well, that problem child is the reason why most of the class is still alive. He saved Minata, Ajri and yourself during the UST, stopping Lita from getting murdered by Stain, prevented Bakugo from getting kidnapped during the training camp, and he actually takes the time to help his classmates become better, which is far more than you have done for them. Midnight said as Aizawa stood up and glared Midnight in the eyes. And you having the nerve to expel an entire class on the first day, who made you the judge of heroic standards? It's our job to help the students realize their potential as heroes, not immediately crush their dreams. Thank God Nizu immediately revoked your dumbass decision and had me teach them, otherwise who knows what could have become of them. Midnight continued to berate her friend, now very close to snapping. Well, maybe the brat should follow the rules and do what he is told, and actually have good taste in women. Because Yayorozu is just pathetic, Xiaolong is a bastard child, Rose is an immature child who got lucky, Belladonna has ties to the White Fang, and Schnee is part of the worst family to ever exist on Earth. And I did my research on them. They have a habit of bending the rules to do what they want, Aizawa said as Midnight started to clench her fists. They had the bright idea to try and deal with Roman Torchwick by themselves, twice I might add. But then again, no wonder they want problem child's dick, because they cannot resist sticking their necks where they don't belong, just like him and his oaf of a father. Aizawa said, being as close to yelling as he had been in a while as Midnight placed the pieces together. No, this all makes sense. The reason why you're acting like such an asshole is because you're jealous that the students aren't blinded by trauma and can actually have fun. And that you hate Izuku and All Might is because you blame him for not being able to save Oboro, Midnight yelled as Aizawa backed up while his eyes widened in shock at her outburst. What the hell are you talking about, Namiri? Aizawa said as Midnight let out a very sarcastic laugh. Don't play dumb with me, Aizawa. Ever since Oboro died, you've been a bitter, nihilistic, stuck-up, sleep-deprived, self-destructive and insomniac asshole. Midnight yelled, trying her best to not just go on a screaming rant. Hey, I didn't even want to be a damn teacher in the first place. You're the one who forced the position onto me. Aizawa snapped at Midnight, who had now completely lost her cool. So we could keep an eye on you, asshole. Midnight snapped at Aizawa, who was taken aback by what he had just heard. You seriously believe that you were the only one to be traumatized because of that? Mike and I were traumatized too, and we got therapy. Which you thought, in your own words, a waste of time and money, and those quacks don't know a damn thing they're talking about. You acted like I wanted you to check your horoscope or something else stupid. Midnight continued to yell at Aizawa before turning around and leaving the room. At this rate, I don't care if you get yourself killed if you don't give a damn about yourself or the people around you. Midnight said coldly before fully leaving the room, leaving Aizawa all alone with his thoughts. Meanwhile, Izuku was teaching Weiss how to bake a cake while Eri was watching them, while eating some strawberries and smiling. You sure I'm doing this right, Aizu? Weiss asked, being unsure if she properly followed Izuku's instructions, as Izuku just smiled and kissed her cheek. You're doing just fine, my ice queen, Izuku said, which made Weiss smile as she and Izuku placed the cake in the oven. And now we wait, Izuku said as Eri reached out for Weiss, who picked up the little snowball as she smiled. Mama Weiss, Eri said as she handed Weiss a strawberry, making Weiss smile as she ate it as Eri hugged her ice queen mama. You adorable little bean, I'm so happy to be one of your mamas. Weiss said as Eri smiled before Izuku hugged them. And I'm happy to be your boyfriend, Weiss, Izuku said as Weiss held his hand before stroking his cheek with a look of pure love in her eyes. And eventually husband, Weiss said as Izuku blushed like crazy hearing that, which made Weiss and Eri giggle, seeing Izuku embarrassed before hearing the door open as they turned to see who it was, which made Weiss surprised. Winter, mother. Weiss ran to her mother and sister and hugged them with a smile as they hugged her back, as Izuku and Eri walked up to them. Hello, darling. Willow said as Weiss pulled Izuku closer to them while Eri smiled. Winter, mother, meet my boyfriend Izuku and our adopted daughter Eri, Weiss said as Izuku just smiled while Eri climbed onto his shoulders. Hello, pretty ladies, Eri said with a smile as Winter and Willow were both surprised by how adorable and polite Eri is. Hello there, little one, Willow said as she smiled at Eri, making the little bean smile as Weiss lifted Eri and held her in her arms. So, you're the boy Weiss kept on talking about, Winter said as Izuku nodded while Weiss gave Eri head pats. Yep, I hope Weiss mentioned all the good things about me, Izuku said while laughing and rubbing the back of his head as Winter very faintly blushed. I think I should also mention I'm sharing Izuku with my friends, Weiss mentioned as Willow and Winter were surprised to hear that. It was Yang's idea, by the way. She figured it'd be the best way for all of us to be happy, Weiss explained to her mother and sister as she hugged Izuku. Well, I'm glad you're happy, Weiss. You're already doing better than myself at finding someone to love, Willow said as she took Eri from Weiss and gave the little bean head pats. Now I know where your beauty comes from, Weiss, Izuku said, which made Weiss blush, same as Willow. I really mean it, by the way. You look great, Mrs. Schnee, Izuku said as Weiss placed Eri on the couch and ruffled her hair. Thanks, Willow said as she still was surprised Izuku complimented her while Weiss just smiled. I called it, Weiss thought to herself as she saw Ruby and John rushing into the common in a sword fight. Ha, you can't hope to match the Prince of All Knights, John said as he and Ruby clashed their weapons against each other. Well, you can't outrun the fastest rose alive, Ruby said before noticing Winter and Willow before stopping dead in their tracks. "Oh, hello," John said as he stood up straight, causing Ruby to fall flat on her face, making Eri giggle as she got up. "You okay, Mama Ruby?" Eri asked as she handed Ruby a strawberry as Ruby smiled and ate it. "I'm fine, Eri," Ruby said as she hugged her little snowball as Lita was about to open his mouth before getting knocked out by Yang. "Are we just going to ignore that?" Winter asked as Izuku and the others just nodded. "Yes, he's an asshole. He and most of the class has been treating me and my friends since we got here for no reason," Weiss explained as Willow just face-palmed and sighed. "And should I mention one of our classmates yoinked mine and Ruby's clothes?" Weiss asked as Winter had a death glare in her eyes as Blake pointed her in the direction of Minata's room, as she ran off. "I'm sorry, one of your classmates stole your clothes and wasn't punished," Willow asked as Izuku and the others nodded. "Blame our old lazy-ass teacher. Don't ask why he hasn't been fired, we honestly have no idea," Blake said as she and Momo sat down before Eri sits on Momo's lap. "How do you put up with all of that?" Willow asked as Izuku looked at the others before looking back at her. "Lots and lots of willpower and tuning out," Izuku explained as Eri hugged Momo, making Blake smile as she hugged Eri. "Eri's such an adorable little angel," Willow said as Izuku smiled. "She really is. The moment I saved her, she saw me as her father, and she was very happy to have multiple mamas," Izuku said as the timer for the oven went off as Izuku walked over to it and got the cake out of the oven. "Yay, the cake is done," Eri said as she sat down at the table while Weiss smiled, knowing she got it right. "See, told you that you did it, Weiss," Izuku said as he hugged Weiss before they kissed, making Eri smile as they sat down to eat as they saw Winter walked back while wiping blood off her hands. "Well, that was unpleasant. I have no idea how that little pervert hasn't been expelled yet," Winter said as Weiss ate a piece of the cake. "I really did do good with this," Weiss said as Izuku smiled at his ice queen. "You really did, Mama Weiss," Eri said with a smile as Ruby hugged her. "Weiss really got lucky finding someone who loves her. Though, why do I feel jealous?" Winter thought to herself. Katsumi woke up in the infirmary as she looked all around her while holding her head, wondering how she got here before remembering what happened to her and Yang's fight as she remembered the look of rage and fury in her eyes. "Oh God, why did I say that?" Katsumi said to herself before she noticed Natsu leaning against the wall with an annoyed look on his face. Who the hell are you?" Katsumi asked, feeling a sense of dread seeing Natsu's face as he stood up straight. "Someone far more stronger than you can possibly imagine," Natsu said as little sparks of fire emitted from his hands before he walked up to Katsumi's bed. "I and everyone in the guild have heard horror stories about you from Izuku, Yang, Ruby and John. I was expecting someone who was absolutely heartless and intimidating, not a pathetic, attention-crazy mutt," Natsu said while Katsumi wanted to prove Natsu wrong, but she knew nothing she could say or do could convince Natsu otherwise. "Part of me really wants to put you through the pain you put Izuku through," Natsu said calmly as small sparks of flames emitted from his mouth. "Izuku's one of the kind, brave, pure and sweet people I have ever met in my life, and you put him through all that pain and suffering for what? Because he wasn't born a freak like you and everyone around you, and you treat him like he's the freak," Natsu said, trying his best not to lose his temper and beat Katsumi while she's already down. "We're not freaks," Katsumi said to Natsu, who just rolled his eyes at what she had told him. "All evidence points to the contrary, especially with the fact that quirks are basically birth defects," Natsu said as Katsumi wanted to disprove what he said, knowing he had a point before Natsu turned around and was about to leave. "I swear, if you or any one of those idiots try anything to hurt my friends, I will make you all regret it," Natsu said with a cold tone in his voice before leaving the room, closing the door on the way out while leaving Katsumi alone with her thoughts. Meanwhile, Ruby was in her room while looking at herself in a mirror, seeing herself in a bunny girl outfit that Yang had gotten her. "Oh, this is completely embarrassing. How can Yang just wear something like this like it's nothing? And does my butt look bigger?" Ruby asked herself while blushing like crazy, imagining Izuku seeing what she was wearing before changing back into her usual outfit, feeling much more comfortable as she flopped on her bed. "Much better," Ruby said as she looked at an old picture of her and Izuku from when they were little, smiling at the old memory. Meanwhile, Yang was in the middle of arguing with Lita over extremely minor grievances while Izuku was already getting annoyed with his near-sighted classmate having it out for his friends and girlfriends. "You're just going to sit back and let that asshole have his way," Izuku heard a voice speak to him as he looked all around him to see where it was coming from, but found nothing. "He'll never appreciate any of you. He only appreciates himself and his brother, nothing more, nothing less. No matter how much you prove your worth, he always finds faults." The voice continued to speak to Izuku as Yang shoved Lita out of her way. If he won't willingly acknowledge your value, make him understand, the voice said with a hint of aggression, to which Izuku shook his head in dismissal, before turning to see Weiss. Wow, you look really cute in casual clothes, Weiss, Izuku said while smiling, making Weiss blush a bit before holding his hand as they left to go on a date together. Get back here, you brainless bimbo. I am not done with you, Lita shouted while following Yang as she turned around to snap at him, only to find Lita getting knocked out by Blake. Guess he has no legs left to stand on, huh, Yang? Blake asked, hoping Yang wouldn't think too hard about her attempt at a joke, only for Yang to say nothing and walk away. Oh no, it's worse than I thought. Yang always laughs at bad and cheesy jokes, guess that whole mess still has her not feeling like herself, Blake thought to herself before thinking of a way to make Yang feel better. It's honestly a miracle you can care for such a brute with mommy issues. Blake turned to see Aoyama as she just rolled her eyes at the Frenchie. Can it, Frenchie? Yang might be a brute, but she has a big heart. Can't say the same for you or any of the other idiots here, Blake said as she tried to walk away, only for Aoyama to not move out of her way. You really want me to test the stereotype that French people are quick to surrender, don't you? Blake said as she rested her hand in Gamble's shroud as Aoyama had an obvious look of fear yet didn't move out of Blake's way. You know, for all your talk about standing out amongst the class, you have got to be one of the most bland-looking people I have ever met in my life, and you've done absolutely nothing important. You are the walking definition of NPC if I had ever seen one, Blake said before Aoyama suddenly spoke up. Better an NPC than being part of the White Fang. Hearing that made Blake freeze up as Aoyama just smirked. You out of everyone have no right to critique our behavior when you've done who knows for your kind, or rather for Adam Taurus. Aoyama said before Blake grabbed him by the collar and pushed him against the wall, with Denki seeing this go down as he tried to intervene. Whoa, what's going on? What did you do to piss her off now, Aoyama? Denki asked as Aoyama was definitely more scared than before yet maintained a brave face. So you're just going to blindly defend a former White Fang member Kaminari? Aoyama asked while Denki was just confused to what he had heard. Blake was part of the White Fang, Denki asked, not knowing if Aoyama was lying or not. Well, it's not hard to put the pieces together, especially when her father started the White Fang in the first place, Aoyama said as Denki had a sheepish look on his face. That does make sense the more I think about it, Denki remarked as Blake shoved Aoyama to the ground before leaving to find Mina, only for Denki to follow after her after putting the pieces together. Yo, Blake, wait, Denki said as Blake kicked open Mina's dorm door, much to Mina's shock and fear. What the hell was that for, Blake? Mina asked before Blake grabbed her by the collar and pinned her against the wall. You just have no shame, do you, you stupid bitch? Blake asked as she intensed her hold on Mina, making her more and more afraid. WW, what are you talking about? Mina asked while Denki tried to de-escalate the situation, but to no avail. You know what, telling Aoyama I used to be part of the White Fang, Blake snapped, only for Mina to look extremely confused. WW, what are you talking about? Mina asked, making Blake shocked as she knew Mina wasn't lying as she dropped Mina before turning to leave, not before apologizing for the misunderstanding as she and Denki left the room. I don't understand, how did Aoyama learn I used to be part of the White Fang? Blake asked, starting to be a bit paranoid as to how Aoyama was able to learn about her past. Maybe he just put the pieces together like he said, Denki said as Blake felt more calm hearing that. Meanwhile, Yang was walking by herself as she heard a noise behind her, before turning behind her only to see nothing behind her as she looked back in front of her, only to see someone right in her way. Hey. What the fuck? Yang screamed as she jumped backwards out of pure shock. Whoa, what's wrong? The hell do you mean what's wrong? You could have given me a damn heart attack. What is wrong with you? Yang said in a panic before calming down before she continued walking, only for the blue-haired girl to float after her. Anyway, my name is Nijiro Hato, the blue-haired girl said with a smile as Yang just rolled her eyes in dismissal. Didn't ask and I don't care, Yang said as she placed her hands in her pockets, hoping Nijiro would get the signal and leave her alone. You're the Golden Dragon Exchange student everyone keeps talking about, right? What's with those gauntlets? Is your hair natural? Are you wearing contacts? Is it true you're sisters with that girl with the scythe? Come to get really angry fast. How do you know Izuku? Nijiro continued to ask rapid-fire questions while Yang was just shocked. Oh, you're kidding, she's like RWBY if she were obnoxious, annoying, an airhead, older and had blue hair and eyes. How hasn't she stopped to take a breath? Yang wondered to herself as Nijiro kept following her, which got on her nerves. Oh my lord, could you go talk someone else's ear off? Yang said while waving her hand in a dismissive fashion, hoping Nijire would just leave her alive. Hey, no need to be rude, I like learning about people, Nijire said with a pout as Yang stopped in her tracks before turning to face the older blue-haired girl. Cool, why don't you go and learn about someone who actually gives a damn? I am far from being in the mood to deal with more obnoxious B.S., Yang said before continuing to walk, only to hear Nijire's voice again. Well, how come you're feeling upset? Nijire asked as Yang groaned in annoyance as she clenched her fists, getting more annoyed with Nijire's insistence on not leaving her alone. Do I need to spell it out for you? Leave me alone, L-E-A-V-E, leave, Yang said, motioning for Nijire to scram before walking off, only to see Nijire following her as Yang started to run before ducking into some bushes to throw off Nijire to her location, which worked as Nijire went to a completely location before Yang walked back to the dorms. Can I get some semblance of peace and quiet around here? Wait a minute, did she use Izuku's first name? Meanwhile, Izuku and Weiss were enjoying their date, while Weiss couldn't get bye in sync out of her head, making Izuku smile hearing Weiss break into song a few times. Your singing voice sounds really good and beautiful, Weiss, Izuku said as Weiss just smiled at Izuku's praise of her singing. Aw, thanks Izuku, Weiss said as she and Izuku kissed for a moment before they noticed a villain causing a scene a little ways away as Izuku looked at Weiss with a little smirk. Shall we sing a song of ice and fire? Izuku asked as Weiss looked at him with her own little smirk. Let's, Weiss said as she placed her hand on Murdenaster before she and Izuku ran towards the villain, who energy blasts that could fire from his eyes who noticed Izuku and Weiss running towards him before firing his blasts at them, only for Weiss to use her glyphs to create a shield as Izuku quickly got all nearby innocent people out of the way. Izuku then channeled his lightning through his arm as he threw a bunch of punches at the optic blasting villain while Weiss got in a few slashes with Murdenaster, before Izuku threw a lightning-empowered punch to the villain, causing him to be sent into the ground, causing a mini shockwave that wasn't severe. The people around Izuku and Weiss started clapping and cheering for what they had done as Weiss felt overwhelmed for being acknowledged for something other than being a shini. This feels nice, Weiss thought to herself before awkwardly waving to the people, not fully sure how she should react as Izuku smiled seeing how cute she was before they hugged. See Weiss, you're a natural at this, Izuku said as Weiss smiled before the two felt a sense of dread suddenly. Hey jackass, Izuku and Weiss turned to see Mirko who had a bit of milkshake over her chest, and she was pissed. Oh, you got to be shitting me, Izuku thought to himself. All for One was rotting away in his cell in Tartarus, awaiting his long-awaited execution but still only being driven by his desire to kill All Might with his own hands before seeing a ghostly apparition appear in front of him. SS Salem, All for One said with a hint of fear and dread in his voice seeing the apparition of the pale-skinned woman before him. Seems like the past few years haven't been kind to you one bit, Shigaraki, Salem said as All for One just scoffed at what he had heard. Blame All Might for this, he took away everything from me, my empire and my face, All for One said with an obvious tone of venomous hatred in his voice. That's always what you say, it's always the fault of a user of One for All and never your own fault, because the big evil demon king can never make mistakes, Salem said with a smirk as All for One was not taking kindly to her stubble insults. How are you even here? A small percentage of my magic is being used to allow this conversation to take place, Salem explained while speaking in a condescending tone towards the imprisoned villain, much to his rage. Now, care to explain why you have been going out of your way to not hold up your end of our deal? Salem asked as All for One tensed up when he heard that. I don't know what you're talking about, All for One said while trying to keep himself under control, something that Salem picked up on very quickly. Perhaps this should jog your memory, Salem said before blasting All for One with magic, causing him to scream in pain which was intensified due to the state his body was in. After your brother died by your hands, you specifically came to me for help of stealing One for All, and I agreed to help you only after you found where Ozma was hiding the relics and you found a way to permanently remove him from the equation, both of which you have nothing to show for over 100 years. Salem said as she ceased her magic blast, much to All for One's relief as a sense of fear crept through him. SS Salem, you need to understand, I had looked everywhere I could think where Ozma would think to hide the relics, and trying to permanently deal with someone who can reincarnate is far from the easiest thing to do, All for One said, trying to hide his fear which didn't fool Salem one bit. Your attempts of searching for the relics only sent me on a wild goose chase, and you barely bothered to come up with ways to get rid of Ozma outside of the most pathetic and easily worked around ideas, Salem said as she approached All for One, causing the faceless villain to start to shake in fear. I just need more time, Salem, I think I found the general area where the relics are being hidden. And as for dealing with Ozma, all for one was cut off by another blast of magic from Salem. Be quiet, I already know where the 4 relics are being kept. And as for getting Ozma out of the way for good, I will work that out in due time. I no longer have any use for you all for one, Salem said as all for one just smirked and laughed at the immortal witch. Go ahead Salem, kill me. If you do, Tamura will want revenge against you and he should not be taken lightly because you left the original copy of All for One behind for him. Salem finished with a smirk as All for One was left speechless at what he had heard. Do you take me for a fool, All for One? I've been keeping tabs on you since our deal was made because I knew something like this could happen. I already know your entire plan for Tamura. You want to give the true copy of your quirk to him in order to take control of his body because your current body is beyond repair and you're close to hitting your quirk limit. So I stole the original copy, Salem said as All for One began to panic, even more so than both of his losses to All Might. No, 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 no. You can't have it. It is my quirk and mine alone, Salem. All for One screamed with an extremely obvious tone of desperation in his voice. Quite fitting that the Demon King is nothing more than a pathetic, lonely man who can't accept change. Trust me, you cannot prevent change no matter how hard you try, but you can make change happen the way you want. And don't worry, I will take good care of your quirk and your little you. A mole, Shigaraki, Salem said before her apparition vanished before All for One's eyes. You won't get away with this, Salem. I'll get out of here, and when I do, I will kill you. Meanwhile, I think the universe just really hates us for whatever reason. Oh, there's no way we're getting out of this without causing a scene. Izuku thought to himself while the very pissed off Mirko was glaring at him, and Weiss. You 2 little shitstains caused that shockwave that made me spill my fucking milkshake. Mirko shouted at Izuku and Weiss, which made Weiss completely dumbfounded and pissed off at why Mirko was mad at them. Are you real? You're pissed at us over a spilt milkshake? We just put our lives at risk to keep these people safe while you're all pissy we accidentally made you spill your damn Starbucks. Weiss snapped at the rabbit hero, which took everyone by surprise, especially Izuku and Mirko herself. Whoa, I've never seen Weiss snap like that before. It's actually pretty hot, Izuku thought to himself with a faint blush on his face. The fact that you were close enough to where we are to the point the shockwave affected you, it speaks volumes that you didn't bother to step in and help. What, was he too weak for the great Mirko to bother to get involved? Weiss said while glaring at Mirko, who wasn't exactly too keen on being told by someone from Atlas, much less a Schnee of all people. Can it, ice brat? The adults are talking. And why are you even here anyway? Were you that bored back home in Atlas you decided to come down here to make yourself feel better by putting down all the poor people because they're more common everywhere that's not Atlas? Mirko remarked with a smirk as Weiss didn't like being stereotyped for being an Atlassian. Hey, not everyone who lives in Atlas is a self-centered, selfish asshole. And don't think I noticed you compared me to my father. Weiss snapped as the people around them were all shocked and surprised at what they were watching, all talking amongst themselves. You're just going to let that rabbit bitch talk to Weiss like that? Stand up and knock Mirko down a peg. Izuku heard the voice from earlier, though this time Izuku didn't shake it off before getting in between Weiss and Mirko. You have no right to call people out for the sins of their family, especially with your past misdelinquent bunny, Izuku said while little sparks of lightning emitted around his hands while giving the rabbit hero a death glare. Given what you did in your youth, which wasn't hard to find, you're even lucky to even be a hero in the first place. Izuku continued to go off as Mirko, who quickly recognized Izuku as the one who won the sports festival. You got guts, kid, I like that, Mirko said as Izuku wasn't having it as little sparks of flames emitted from his mouth in sync with his lightning sparking around his hand. Save it, I'd rather hug a bullet than take hollow compliments from someone who's fine with helping yet hates getting help. You can't have your cake and eat it too, you bunny brat. Izuku said while Weiss was surprised to see Izuku snapping like this for her sake. Well, not my fault being on a team is for cowards, Mirko said as Weiss felt something snap within her. How dare you? Being on a team is one of the best things you could experience. You're basically how people only see Goku as someone who only cares about fighting and fighting alone in living form. Only difference is that you actively choose to be in a situation where you cannot afford to screw around. Weiss said while glaring at Mirko as Izuku nodded in agreement with his Ice Queen. Ha, you think you and whatever team of wimps you can beat me? Mirko said with a cocky smirk. As a matter of fact, we do, Weiss said while maintaining eye contact with the rabbit hero, along with Izuku. Ha, well I hope you can put your money where your mouths are, because I'm going to beat your asses so hard to the point you wish you were dead in a week's time. Mirko said before hopping away as the adrenaline rush Izuku and Weiss had began to fade away. Well, guess it's rabbit session for us next week, Izuku said, which got a laugh from the people around him and Weiss before they were on their way. Oh boy, what have we gotten ourselves into? Weiss asked, being a bit shocked at what had happened and worried she and Izuku have gotten in over their heads. Honestly, Weiss, Mirko still would have forced this on us even had we objected to it. Still, all of us are definitely enough to fight Mirko. Though she should be beyond grateful graze at the guild, otherwise he'd end the fight before it could get going. Izuku said as he and Weiss held hands as they continued to walk. Meanwhile, Professor Ozpin was all alone in his office, thinking of planning his next move when he felt a sudden draft out of nowhere. Well, isn't this a pleasant surprise, Ozpin said before turning around in his chair, being greeted by Raven who wasn't exactly very happy. So, are you here to finally do your duties, Spring Maiden? Ozpin asked as while Raven didn't show it, she absolutely despised hearing those words leave his mouth. I'd rather die than ever become one of your pawns again, you liar. Raven said as Ozpin was greatly displeased to hear that. Then why exactly are you here, Raven? Ozpin asked before suddenly finding himself being at the end of Raven's blade as she held an ice-cold glare at him. Whatever scheme you have this time, you better keep Yang and RWBY out of it, Raven said as Ozpin kept a completely neutral expression. I don't know what you're talking about, Raven, Ozpin said calmly, but Raven wasn't fooled one bit. Cut the bullshit, Ozpin, you're planning on using them and their team the same way you wanted to use me, Crow, Summer and Tai. Crow's already completely wrapped around your finger, and is by all means, your bitch, Raven snapped at the man, who just maintained a straight and emotionless face. Only reasons Yang, RWBY and John are even here in the first place isn't because you think they've proven themselves, it's because of their familial legacies, Raven said with a tone of venomous hatred towards her former headmaster. Odd that you're showing lots of concern for those you had abandoned, Ozpin said as Raven let her anger frustration take over as she slashed Ozpin's desk a tiny bit, but it was enough to make him scared despite not showing it. Because of you. It's because of you I'm stuck with these powers I didn't even want in the first place. You knew my emotions would be all over the place since you had me train the last Spring Maiden while I was pregnant with Yang, ensuring her power would go right to me when she died. I finally had a life I was happy and content with, only to have it all ruined by you, and I couldn't tell Summer, Crow and Tai because you basically brainwashed them. Raven ranted, trying to keep her cool despite being on the verge of tears. I didn't brainwash anyone. They made their choices just like you did, Raven, as well Yang and RWBY when the time comes. And I'm sure Izuku would as well, Ozpin said before Raven swung Omen into his desk, leaving a decent mark as she placed her blade back into its sheath. Leave him out of your lies and schemes, the poor kid has already gone through. I doubt that he want all this on his plate, especially with how you are, old man. Now leave Yang and RWBY out of your schemes, or else I will make you regret it, Raven said as she turned towards the window she had came in through. And how do you expect to do that, Raven? You know you can't kill me, Ozpin said with a cocky smirk, before Raven turned back to face him. Well, I'm sure that Glinda, Crow and James wouldn't be too pleased with you if they learned that Salem can't be killed, Raven said with her own cocky smirk, making Ozpin immediately lose his as Raven transformed into her bird form before flying away, leaving Ozpin with only one thing on his mind. How did she figure that out? Izuku and Weiss had returned to the dorms as they had explained to the others what they had gotten themselves into. So let me see if I heard that right. Mirko wants to fight us in a week because she got pissy because you two unintentionally made her spill her drink. Did I get that right? Ren asked as Izuku and Weiss as they nodded their heads in unison. Okay, I'm convinced we all killed someone in past lives because the world likes to bend us over and find us in the Alps, John said as he placed his hands onto his face before sighing. Least we have a week to prepare for this, not like we'll need it anyway, Yang remarked. Better safe than sorry, Yang. After all, we can't expect to get by in battle relying on raw power, Weiss said as she placed Eri on her lap. You're sounding like my dad right now, Weiss. You have no idea how many times he told me that to hammer that point, Yang said with a chuckle while Blake was playing Metal Gear 2. Solid Snake with Momo watching her as Blake as at the ending battle against Big Boss. Big Boss, you're alive. Snake, welcome to Zanzibar land. I knew you'd come back to me. I came to get rid of the nightmares I've been having for the past 3 years. The nightmares, they never go away, Snake. Once you've been on the battlefield, tasted the exhilaration, the tension, it all becomes part of you. Once you've awakened the warrior within, it never sleeps again. You crave even better tensions, even bigger thrills. As a mercenary, I thought you would have realized that by now. Sad thing is, Big Boss does a point. Once you've felt the thrill of battle, it's pretty hard to feel satisfaction from anything else, Blake said as Momo looked over her shoulder towards Yang. I mean, I can see that with Bakugo, but Yang's the brawler of our group, yet she seems to get satisfaction from things outside of battle, Momo said before realizing the implications of what Blake had said, as she looked around before looking back at Blake. Blake, are you trying to say that? Yes, when I left the White Farm, I'll admit that I had some problems finding satisfaction from normal things. Though thankfully I had people to help me with that, Blake said as she looked at her team and Izuku, whom she gave a loving smile to. I hate to imagine what I'd be like if it weren't for you all, Blake said as she placed her focus back onto the game. You care nothing for power, money, or even sex. The only thing that satisfies your cravings is war. All I've done is given you a place for it. I've given you a reason to live. I never would have made you for such a hypocrite, Big Boss. You saw all those children, didn't you? Everyone is a victim of a war somewhere in the world, and they'll make fine soldiers in the next war. Start a war, fan its flames, create victims, then save them, train them, and feed them back onto the battlefield. It's a perfectly logical system. In this world of ours, conflict never ends. And neither does our purpose. Blake cringed a bit upon reading that, having it hit a bit too close to home for the Faunus girl. So there's plenty of job opportunities, is that what you're trying to say? On the battlefield, you and I are valuable commodities, but back home, we're nothing but deadweight. If we're lucky, we'll catch the attention of some 2-bit journalists from some cheap tabloid. You and I are doomed to remain here until we die like dogs on the battlefield. I've got one more fight left. To free myself from your grip, to rid myself of these nightmares. Big Boss, I will defeat you. It doesn't matter who wins here, our fight will continue. The loser will be liberated from the battlefield and the winner will remain, and the survivor will carry out the rest of his days as a soldier. It doesn't have to be that way, I'm not like you. I love life. Very well, Snake. I'll release you from your suffering. As your former commander, I'll do you one last favor and put you out of your misery. I don't need any more favors from you. Really, and how do you expect to defeat me in your current condition, with no weapon? Never give up, fight until the end. Always believe you will succeed even when the odds are against you. Those are your words. Even I make mistakes from time to time. Snake, this will be our final battle. Let's end this once and for all. So what exactly will we do for the training? Sure, a week is a decent amount of time for training, but at the same time, bit of a restrictive time limit. Ren mentioned as they all took a moment to think how they'd handle their training for the fight. We'll train immediately after class is over until dinner, take a little break before continuing for a bit until bed, then we keep at until the day before so we can rest. Izuku said as the others agreed to it as Weiss patted Eri on the head. You all can do this, Papa, Eri said with a smile as Izuku and Weiss hugged her. Thanks for the encouragement, Eri, Urza said as she gave Eri a hug. Mirko should be thanking her lucky stars Gray isn't here, otherwise there wouldn't be a fight in the first place. Least against her at least, Natsu said with a sheepish look on his face. Hey, least you admitted you and Gray have a problem with picking the most inconvenient times to argue and fight. RWBY said as Natsu knew he couldn't retort as they looked at Winter and Willow just relaxing, which made Weiss smile. You know, Weiss, your mom could really pull off a Sindel cosplay. Yang said as Weiss looked at her with a deadpan look. Really, Yang, seriously, Weiss asked. What? She basically already has the look and the build to pull it off. With some tweaks, boom, she looks exactly like her, Yang said as Weiss didn't want to admit it out loud. I can see where Yang's coming from, Izuku admitted, making Weiss a bit embarrassed while Eri was too innocent and naive to know what they were talking about and just ignored it. God, this is going to be a mess when the rest find out about this, Pyrrha remarked as they looked over at Blake, seeing her having assumed the makeshift flamer thrower and used it to set Big Boss on fire. That's one way to do it, I guess, bit brutal though if you asked me, Momo said as she and Blake watched Big Boss burn to death, as much as you could get away with in an 8-bit game. Yet his body was intact by the time of Shadow Moses, Blake said before she and Momo chuckled as the others began thinking of a training regime for them to follow for the week's time that they have. This is going to be one hell of a fight, Izuku thought to himself. Why are you even bothering with that, RWBY? Yang asked as RWBY was coming up with party plans. Oh come on, Yang, it's worth a shot. This might just be what we need to get the others to realize we're good people, RWBY explained as Yang couldn't help but just smile at her sister's enthusiasm. Rubes, I get where you're coming from, but I highly doubt that will work. Honestly, I'm shocked I haven't been heckled for, Yang said as RWBY got up and hugged her sister. It's worth a shot, Yang, Ruby said with a smile as Yang just chuckled and hugged her sister back. I guess you're right, sis, it would be worth trying, Yang said as Ruby felt over the moon with joy, much to Yang's delight seeing her sister happy before their stomachs rumbled. Ruby hopped onto Yang's back, making the blonde brawler smile as she walked out of the room before heading to the common area to get themselves some food. Guess some things haven't changed since we were kids, Yang said to herself as memories of her and Ruby's childhood were playing in her mind, making Yang chuckle over her remembrance as they made it to the common area. What the fuck, Ren? I had Izuku on the ropes. The voice of John suddenly shouting shocked the sisters, prompting Ruby to jump off Yang's back to check what caused John to snap at Ren. Guys, what the hell is happening? Yang asked as she saw that Izuku, John, Ren and Natsu were playing Smash Bros. Ultimate on Battlefield and immediately realized what was happening, with the teams being Izuku and Natsu against John and Ren as Izuku was playing as Ganondorf, Natsu as Fox, John as Link and Ren as Sheik. John, your ass was at 99% and Izuku's playing Ganondorf. You were basically begging to get hit with his forward smash, Ren said as he and John respawned on the stage. Ren, you were at 169% and you jumped right in front of Izuku, right before Izuku did his smash attack and didn't use your counter, and now we're both at one stock. What were you thinking? John snapped back as Natsu started pulling off combos on Ren. I thought I could trick Izuku into canceling his attack so we can tag team him. I didn't think he'd use it without fully charging it, Ren said to justify himself as Yang and Ruby just chuckled to themselves as they went to the fridge. Then use your damn counter, Ren. You do know which direction you use for the counter, right? Counter these nuts, John, Ren clapped back while John rolled his eyes at Ren's remark, making Ruby and Yang giggle at their antics as Yang opened the fridge and looked for something to eat. Boys will always be boys, Yang said as she and Ruby grabbed water bottles, but couldn't find anything decent to eat as Ruby rolled her eyes before closing the fridge. Take that, suckers, Izuku shouted as he and Natsu both spiked John and Ren off the stage, winning their match as Izuku started celebrating, both finding himself being pulled into a kiss from Yang and Ruby. Oh come guys, really, do you have to rub it in? Ren asked, while faking gagging at the sight as John just chuckled. Meanwhile, Weiss, Blake and Momo were in the middle of a training session with Urza, with Weiss and Blake were clashing their weapons against Urza's blade as Momo created a staff before trying to go for Urza's legs, only for the red-headed warrior to push Weiss and Blake back before jumping over Momo. You'll have to be faster than that, Urza said as she knocked Momo to the ground as Blake tried to attack her from behind, prompting Urza to try and disarm her only to realize it was a clone which gave Momo the chance to create a shield and used it to go for Urza's legs, this time actually managing to trip up Urza. But Urza quickly got back onto her feet as Weiss started throwing a barrage of sword slashes her way, which Urza was very quick to counter before being able to take Murdermaster from her. Your stance needs some work, Weiss. Plus, you need to put more strength into your attacks, Urza said before finding herself to fend off Blake and Momo's combined attacks. You two need to do better than that, Urza remarked before kneeing Momo in the gut, and quickly throwing her into Blake, making them both fall as Momo threw her staff at Urza, though she quickly dodged it but noticed Momo had a little smirk on her face. Urza turned to see Weiss with the staff, before Momo was able to think fast enough and tripped up Urza, giving the three a chance to go in for the attack as Weiss used her glyphs to make it hard for Urza to get back up. After taking a few hits, Urza did to spin kick to knock the three back before quickly pinning them to the ground. Alright, not bad. Bit more time and practice, and you three will get even stronger, Urza said with a smile as she helped them all up, before they all went inside and saw Izuku, John, Ren and Natsu playing Mario Party. Oh boy, someone is going to get thrown through the wall, Urza remarked, getting concerned looks from Blake and Weiss as they sat down in the kitchen with Ruby and Yang. Why you are kidding, right Urza? Weiss asked, only to hear Ruby and Yang chuckle while Urza shook her head no. Trust us Weiss, Mario Party in the guild tends to get really heated, Yang said as she chuckled over her pun, prompting Ruby to roll her eyes at Yang's pun. Yang's not wrong, if you thought normal Mario Party gets messy, you'll be surprised how intense every time Mario Party is played in Fairy Tail. One time when Nasta played with Izuku, Gray and Lucy, Gray was destroying them before Natsu landed on chance time and started talking smack, which led to Gray crashing out and him and Natsu beating the crap out of each other because Gray was so sure he was going to lose all his starts to Natsu. Ruby explained as Weiss and Blake just had shocked looks on their faces, while Yang and Urza couldn't stop them from laughing. Turns out Gray's stars went to Lucy rather than Natsu. Yang finished explaining the story as she was trying her hardest not to break out in insane laughter. Wait a second, who's Lucy? Weiss asked as Yang, RWBY and Urza all smirked upon hearing the question. Natsu's girlfriend, Yang said, which Natsu overheard and immediately blushed, which Izuku and John both saw and smirked. Oh, Lucy's not my. Hope you're prepared to make this up to her, dude. Izuku joked as he and John locked in while Rin didn't really know what was happening, but was just happy to be there with his friends. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you'll need lots of yogurt to make sure she's not mad at you, John said as he chuckled, making Natsu blush even more as they kept playing Mario Party. Wow, it's that easy to get Natsu to shut up, other than using Eri anyway, Weiss said with a hint of surprise in her voice. You'd be surprised how easy it can be at times. Granted, it depends on how angry Natsu is, Urza said as Yang snickered. Don't you mean how fired up he gets? Yang asked while laughing as RWBY and Urza both rolled their eyes, but Blake couldn't help but laugh a little before they suddenly saw Minata get thrown out an open window. Take that, you fucking super pervert, Nora shouted as everyone present just sighed before Izuku got up and handed his controller to Yang as he went outside to drag Minata's unconscious ass back inside. Izuku picked up Minata's body as he was getting bombarded with negative statements from Lita, Mina, Tsuyu and Aoyama as Izuku tried to ignore them, but they kept on going before Izuku had enough, before suddenly shooting a ball of ice at Tsuyu, which shocked everyone present as the frog girl was a bit disoriented and sleepy. How did I? Izuku asked himself while looking at his hand in shock before throwing Minata onto a nearby table while Lita, Mina, Aoi and Tsuyu all ran away from Izuku. That's new, Weiss said as she held Izuku's hands, getting a smile from the green-haired boy as she hugged him. You know, Izuku, I can help you get a handle with your new ice powers with my sister if you'd like, Weiss offered as Izuku hugged her and gave the beautiful Ice Queen a kiss on the cheek. I'd like that, Izuku said while Yang handed him back his controller as Izuku sat back down before joining back in the game of Mario Party he was playing with his friends. Time skip. Izuku, Blake and Weiss were out on a little date with Eri coming along. As they were shopping for the little snowball while they were at it, while unknown to them, they were being watched by Adam Taurus from the rooftops. TCH. As if falling for a human wasn't enough, you just had to befriend a Shmi of all people, Adam said, gritting his teeth as he really wanted to jump them but remembered what happened the last time he and Izuku fought each other. There has to be something I can use against him to make him drop his guard, Adam said to himself before turning around to leave before coming face to face with Shigaraki and Kurogyri. Well, Adam Taurus. I expected you to be taller, Shigaraki said with a mocking tone as Adam immediately moved his hand onto the hilt of his sword. The infamous Tamura Shigaraki. You're more emo looking than I was expecting, Adam remarked back towards Shigaraki. Have you looked in a mirror lately? Shigaraki asked as Adam was already getting fed up with this interaction as the two started circling around each other. What do you want with me? Adam asked as he kept his hands placed on his weapon and kept his eyes locked on Shigaraki. To offer a truce. We both have a common enemy. Just imagine what the League and the White Fang could accomplish together, Shigaraki said, prepared to go on a rant but was met with Adam shoving him out of his way and walked away. I'm not interested in joining up with you rejects. You and the people in your little league know nothing of what suffering is really like. Try being constantly enslaved, subjugated, mistreated and having to hide who you really are just to be seen as equal to humans. You're all just children throwing fits. Besides, I'm already stuck in an alliance with another human against my better judgment, Adam said as he continued walking away as Shigaraki was immediately furious over Adam rejecting his offer. You're doing the exact same thing, you know. You and your stupid White Fang are taking your issues out on people too, Shigaraki yelled, before Adam turned around to face him again. Because we already tried the civilized way, and that got us absolutely nowhere. The only way to make change happen is to do it yourself. Besides, I have one rule. Never attack humans who have not interfered, or you will attack indiscriminately, and you all just want to destroy the world. I just want what's best for my people. We are not the same, Adam said as he could tell Shigaraki was about to make a move before Shigaraki went to rush Adam, only for him to jump over and quickly stabbed Shigaraki in his side. Gah, you bullhorn bastard, Shigaraki yelled in pain as Adam pulled out his sword while blood from Shigaraki fell onto the rooftop they were standing on. Come after me or my people, and I promise you I won't be so generous next time we met, Adam said before promptly made his leave while Shigaraki saw Izuku and Blake had made their way onto the rooftop. Hey there handyman, miss me, Izuku said as he blasted lightning at Shigaraki and Kurogyri, prompting the mist man to open a warp gate as they ran right through it. Was he that Shigaraki guy you told us about? Blake asked as Izuku nodded as he noticed the blood from Shigaraki, making his eyes light up as he grabbed a vial from his pocket and collected the blood sample. Aha, this is perfect, We can use this blood sample to find out Shigaraki's true identity. Let's just see how well you'll be able to hide now, hand job. Izuku said with a massive smirk on his face, and placed the vial back into his pocket. First, my dad beat All for One's ass so hard his quirks can just barely work, then we have Toga captured and now we have a sample of your blood. The walls are closing in on you and the league fast, Shiggy. Let's see how you'll manage with your dear old safety net, Izuku said to himself as Blake grabbed onto Izuku's arm, making them both smile. That's it guys. Thanks for watching and supporting us. See you in the next part.